This is S.P.H.E.R.E.S, and you're listening to the Paradise Arcade.
The Paradise Arcade may contain explicit content. Listener discretion is advised. You're listening to the Paradise Arcade. I really appreciate you joining me. You've been involved in the electronic music scene, a bit of the synthwave scene for a really long time, and I'm really interested to kind of know about your journey. I know that you've been back and forth between Toronto and NYC, so I'm curious. Start with your history. What got you into initially electronic music, and then how did you find yourself as S.P.H.E.R.E.S?
Sure. This is that's a great question, and it's a really long answer. I'm going to try to not to talk your ear off about it, but because I could go on and on about it. But it started a long time ago. So I'm I've been around for a while. I'm in my 40s right now, right? So I've been involved with music and in the music industry probably since I was a teenager. I started DJing back in around 98, I think, was the first time I bought my own turntables, and got into a lot of DJing in high school and in college. A lot in college. That's when I essentially moved to Toronto and started DJing at clubs. And it started at house parties and then at my college campus, and then it moved to various clubs, from after hours parties to even big clubs like the Docks here in Toronto, which I think holds over 1,000 people. It's really, really, really big. So I got into drum and bass and hip hop and a lot of kind of like more of the 90s hip hop and turntablist kind of music, like Cut Chemist and Kid Koala. Outkast, Cool Keith, and even like Wu-Tang. Liquid Swords was one of the biggest albums for me in college, and it was really that kind of music that I was heavily involved with, and a lot of the music that I was playing out more at clubs though was drum and bass. So drum and bass and jungle were really it made up the majority of my record collection, but hip hop was more the music I would just listen to, and when I was just hanging out and relaxing. Hip hop and IDM. I don't know how I could even forget mentioning IDM, but So there's so much I could say about that too.
I think really, like, how did so hip hop, drum and bass, IDM. Those are they're, especially in that time, they're underground. How did you initially hear about them? What drew you to drum and bass versus other types of music?
Yeah, so I'm thinking of the first time I heard drum and bass was when I moved to Toronto. It was kind of a second London, probably the biggest scene outside of London, England, for drum and bass music. So it was everywhere. It's just saturated in the culture here, and it was just that those fast breaks and that deep sub bass that kind of I got exposed to more of like that minimalist future sound of the late 90s, early 2000s, where it was kind of a lot of artists that were producing kind of minimalist funk with like some jazz elements, like Matrix, Noisia, Cause for Concern, TDK and Polar. They ran these record labels called Certificate 18 and Subtitles that some people might be familiar with those, but it was more along the lines of like kind of cinematic, futuristic, minimal funk, and it just I just loved that futuristic vibe with more of like a deeper atmosphere to it, and the breaks, those funky breaks. I was absolutely obsessed with it when I heard it.
Yeah, it's really, I think drum and bass came out and IDM, it was so different. Because there's initial techno and then house music and trance. And I think like when I heard drum and bass or IDM, it was really the first time of like, oh, you can do that. You can make that sound. You could do it in a computer, you could do it in a synthesizer, and it was so different than anything else. Like when I heard Aphex Twin for the first time, it was like everything Warp. Like I just did a deep dive into it because like I'd never heard anything like IDM before.
Right. Yeah. So I was really into that kind of marriage between like highly synthetic sounds with the really organic percussion, and that's a lot of drum and bass back then was really built around that kind of like organic breaks with the really synthetic atmospheres. And of course, like drum and bass is really fast, energetic music, but you can't like to me, I can't be listening to it 24 hours a day.
Right.
There's times where I just want to relax. So IDM music, it really goes well with it, where it has that kind of same kind of minimalist vibe, but with that highly technical percussion and that glitchy soundscape with like deep synths and just that the whole production quality. Just it to me, it just fits so well with the taste that I had in drum and bass. But yeah, some of the like you mentioned, Aphex Twin and Warp. So one I would also want to mention Two Lone Swordsmen. I don't know if you're familiar with Andrew Weatherall.
Yes.
Or Two Lone Swordsmen.
Yep.
Oh, okay, yeah. So for me, they were probably one of the biggest influences for me off of Warp. They were more kind of a combination of like Detroit techno and electro and a bit of acid house and breaks and even hip hop, kind of a whole mashup of that. But they didn't really have a specific genre that they followed. It was always like a mashup of these styles, and then their albums were always, had a different kind of theme to them. But Two Lone Swordsmen, Boards of Canada, Funk Karma, SM, Dub Recordings was. I used to have so much vinyl on Dub Recordings, and that label is one of my absolute favorites from the early 2000s. Yeah, alongside that, there was a little bit of side dub that I was also listening to, which was kind of similar to IDM, but with more. I would say it's more on grid, a little less glitchy, less syncopated. But are you familiar with side dub music?
It's like sci-fi dub.
No, it's like a down tempo trance almost. It's kind of like psychedelic dub music, like literally psychedelic dub.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm not familiar with it. You're and I just want to point out that like your knowledge and depth of knowledge of underground electronic music is really extensive. It's really deep. I when I usually have conversations with folks, it doesn't go that far down the rabbit hole of it's the sci-fi movies or a few artists. They're really fixated on one kind of artist, and that was sort of it. But your journey, it's really impressive. That's really what I'm trying to get at is you're coming at the S.P.H.E.R.E.S project with a lot of history, a lot of influence. And I think that really shows through on, I think for me, that's what really distinguishes your music from other folks, is that I couldn't put my finger on it, but now that you're saying all these things, it makes total sense now when listening to your music.
Thanks.
So yeah, you side up a lot of things. You're DJing, going through college. You've worked your way up from, house parties, after parties, doing shows. Where do you get to the point where does that just keep going and you're building trajectory? What does that continue to look like?
Yeah, so that was just that was really just the start. So I was getting into to DJing, and then the logical step from that was event production and event hosting. So yeah, right through the early 2000s, I was involved in hosting events in Toronto, mostly drum and bass events. I was part of a crew here, which was called the TorontoJungle.com crew. We ran a website that basically covered the entire drum and bass and jungle scene. And mostly we're known for uploading photo galleries, taking like video like creating video recaps of events where there was like a couple of us that would edit together videos of like tons of footage from big events. That's kind of how I got involved in more of the media side of things in design within the music industry. So I went to school for, so just to go back a bit, I went to school for graphic design, 3D animation, and video production. And I was like a career student. So I went to school for not just, 3, 4, 5 years. It was about 6 years nonstop, right through the summers too.
Damn.
So I took, yeah. So I took a few different courses and just kept going to school. And even, yeah, like I was saying, right through the summers, I just wanted to keep learning. And I didn't want to study one specific area, but I didn't want to rush through one area as well. Like I didn't want to focus 4 years on graphic design, and like I wanted to learn as much as I could about all these different areas, but also get it done as fast as I could, because I don't want to be like 30 years old graduating from college, right? So it was expensive and it was really hard work, but I got through all of that and then started producing videos with TorontoJungle.com for all these events. So we were hosting some of the clubs here in Toronto. Like we had this old club called Turbo, which had another area called Clinic, or maybe it had changed names from Turbo to Clinic, but we were hosting the events there once a month. Might have been on a Saturday night, I can't remember now. That club and a couple others. There was System Soundbar in Toronto, and also the Docks, which I'm pretty sure the Docks has changed names now. It's been a while since I've lived here, so I haven't been going out to any of those clubs, so the names are probably all gone.
Yeah, probably.
But that's what they were called back in the day. And yeah, so from there I moved to New York City, and I had kind of decided, well, the whole partying and DJing and everything had kind of taken over my life quite a bit, and it was really difficult to work and do that at the same time, because I was freelancing at the time and I was working for myself, which was giving me a lot of flexibility, but it was hard to be really disciplined with that and still be really deep in the party scene, like that deep into the party scene, and still manage to get my work done, right?
Yeah, wow. It's a long time. So you get to NYC, you're more focused, you're trying to be more disciplined. What did that end up looking like for you?
Yeah, so I took so at first I quit music cold turkey for a few years, and I just had to stop partying and stop not partying, but I wasn't DJing anymore. I wasn't throwing events, and I was mainly focused on my career. And I had one job that I was at for maybe 2 years in New York, and then I moved to another job. And then I was with that same company for years and years. I'm still with them today, even back here in Toronto now. But yeah, about after a few years, I started to miss it again, and then I started to talk with some local promoters. There was a promoter at Webster Hall. Yeah, it's right in Manhattan. One of the big clubs where they would throw a lot of electro house parties. Like I'm talking like artists like Boys Noise and that kind of thing, right? Every Saturday, every weekend, they would have huge artists like that. And I started speaking with them about throwing some more underground parties in Brooklyn. And I was into, at that time, I was into more bass music too, like 130, 140 stuff. And still drum and bass as well. But I was venturing more into like early dubstep, like the old school, really roots oriented dubstep, right? Not the newer stuff that's more EDM, but the really rootsy stuff. Even like lo-fi dub music too. Like I was getting involved in that in New York. And so that essentially was how I got involved again with event hosting. And I did the bass music thing for for a while, and then I eventually went back to drum and bass because it was my number one love. And for years I was hosting events with the crew. Natural Selection was the name of the crew in New York, where we were throwing events once a month for a while, and then once every few months, and then it turned to once a month, and then it got to the point where we were doing like even up to do a couple events a month. I was getting really busy, and I was their resident DJ, so I would almost always be DJing at the events, but also taking care of all the live visuals at the events, and then also helping set up all the sound at the events. So we would bring in usually custom sound systems and just beef up the stock sound. A lot of clubs, they have decent sound, but it's not really optimal, and it gets really expensive when you really put that much into the quality of an event. But that's, I mean, the whole reason why I'm involved in music is not to make money. It's just for the love of it, right? And I just wanted to have like a really good experience at my events. So we would bring in custom sound, like we would almost like a Function One type sound system sometimes, which is like really, really high end, right? And we would have a whole stack of subs right across the front of the stage. We would have subs in the back that we would bring in that the club didn't have. We would have basically set up 4-point sound. And then I would also have my visuals that were playing usually on a massive projector. And then we would bring in lights from one of my friends was a bartender. He was part of the crew, but he was a bartender for the Brooklyn Mirage, which is I think probably the largest club in the States outside of Vegas. But that club, yeah, it's ridiculous. They have it's an indoor-outdoor venue with 2 warehouses and a massive outdoor area and all these palm trees everywhere. Over in Brooklyn, yeah, it's really, really nice place.
I just gotta say, I'm exhausted listening to you. The amount of work, because used to be a promoter in Minneapolis and put on shows, right. And just the scale that we did it was so much work. I think really need to point out, like, when you put on a show and you put in what you're talking about, the amount of effort and coordination, time spent to set up these events is astronomical. So you're working and then you're just doing this.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was my life. Yeah, it was my whole social life, and it took up, basically all my time. Yeah.
I mean, because that's how much work putting on. So you say, oh yeah, you're putting on a show a month, and then I'm just thinking about, like, whatever promotion you're doing or whatever, all of those things to connect and network and to, and obviously once you get to a point where you're known, you don't have to do as much of that, but it's still it's so much work. So, okay. Wow. So you're doing that.
Oh, right. So also a big part of it too was, entertaining the artists that we would book and bring in. So, a lot of times I would host artists at my place. And if not, then we'd set them up in a hotel nearby, but then we would basically be entertaining them their whole stay. Usually they'd want to stay like for a week or 2 in New York too. So it wasn't easy. Like, we didn't just have to entertain them for a weekend. We had to take them out for the entire time that they were there.
God damn.
And it was I loved it, and I love being able to hang out with a lot of the artists we brought in were really big too, like D Bridge, and D Bridge is essentially from one of the main artists from Bad Company, which is one of the largest drum and bass acts ever. But we would bring in a lot of artists that it was amazing spending time with them, but it was also just so exhausting because they would want to do everything and go out and do all sorts of stuff, right? It's New York City. So
right.
It got so exhausting to the point where I had to stop. I had to pull out of the events and start focusing on myself more. Because I felt like it was just so draining and taking up all my time. And I'm like, I've spent all this time promoting other people and helping them with their music careers, and because we had to make sure that our events at least broke even, or a lot of times we would end up falling short. It wasn't we
Yeah.
were definitely weren't making money, not especially not in New York City when there's so many other people hosting events. There's a lot of competition there, so a lot of times we're trying to recoup our as much as we can at all of these events. So we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to promoting these artists, and it got to the point where I'm thinking, I'm doing so much for people, like for other artists and for the scene and for all the listeners and all the people that were there wanting to go to these parties. And if it wasn't for us throwing these events, then they wouldn't have these underground parties. They would just, have their regular mainstream events going on that the clubs tend to book, like the larger or mainstream artists themselves. And then there's less of a risk for them.
Right.
And that's why it's harder to find these underground parties in places like New York, right?
Yeah.
It's the cost of throwing events there is just astronomical. It's pretty high. Like the bar guarantees are insane, and it's just mad there. But that's why I eventually pulled out of promoting and DJing and decided to start producing music.
So what did you
And just
did you start out producing drum and bass? Was that your
no,
first? No.
no. So this is how I'm gonna loop back to your original question. How did I get back in, like, originally involved with synthwave?
Okay.
So right when I pulled out of hosting events, I ended up meeting some synthwave artists in New York. I met Bunny X, Zarina, and a handful of others that were living in my neighborhood. And it was wild. Like we were all within walking distance from each other. And I'm trying to remember how I originally met them. But I think that they might have been performing at somewhere, and we just started talking, and then we realized we all live in the same neighborhood, and we just started hanging out. But that's kind of how it was back around 2016, 2017.
Yep.
It was
Yep.
a couple,
Okay.
yeah, it was 2 or 3 years before the start of the pandemic anyway. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So you're hanging out with Zero Buddy X.
Yeah,
What?
Nina. We had there was an event that Zarina was hosting. It was where she was playing with Nina, Parallels, Bunny X, and yeah, it was like the Ladies of Synth. I think that's the name of the event
Oh,
too.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I got to show you. We have a big group photo of us up on Zarina's rooftop. It was really, really good memories. That was about a year before the pandemic hit. And then a bunch of us ended up moving away from New York. But
Yes.
yeah, I missed them all. Yeah, so that's yeah, right around 2016, 2017, I kind of discovered synthwave. I'm not sure why I didn't find it earlier, but as soon as I discovered it, I fell in love with it. I grew up through the 80s and 90s, and I instantly just connected with it. And then that's where I just decided, okay, this is the music that I want to make. But back then I was more exposed to, or I guess I was more listening to mid-tempo funk.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And I wasn't like the first year. I would say about the first year I started listening to synthwave. I wasn't as exposed to chill synth and chill wave, chill synth, and data wave as much. It wasn't until maybe my second year when I started expanding. But that first year, I was more drawn towards like mid-tempo funk. There was an album from, I think it was Alex and Tokyo Rose, that Blood Club,
Oh,
that
sure.
was
Yeah.
super funky, and I'm like, okay, this is like, it's pretty dark stuff, but really, really, really funky, and I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. Like this is so good, and that's where I really fell in love, and I'm like, okay, I want to start making this music now. But then I just started discovering and going just deeper into the rabbit hole of synthwave and chillwave, and started finding more music that I was connecting more with, and that's how it all started. So I ended up, I fully moved on from drum and bass, and I just wanted something to move on to something fresh, and that just was really connecting with me at the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a familiar story a bit. So yeah, it's definitely something that I think resonates with people our age, and it kind of cuts through a lot of things. Did you find that it really was that it cut through a lot of other types of music, that it really spoke to you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I stopped listening to almost everything else. Yeah, and I was pretty obsessed with it. I mean, I'm still obsessed with it. So I don't.
That's fair.
There's not much else I listen to now besides chill wave, like chill wave, chill synth, and vaporwave, and my indie rock and psychedelic are definitely at the top of that list too. I would say the one music that I haven't really gone back and listened to as much is IDM though, which I probably should go back and pull up some stuff from the archives, because it's been a while since I've been listening to that.
How did you land on what you initially did? Because there's synthwave, there's chill synth, and I really wouldn't put spheres in any. It's maybe a little more on the down tempo side. It can be, but I wouldn't place it firmly in a chill synth zone either.
Right. So yeah, so around 4 years ago, I started producing, but I was not really focused in what I was making, and I would say it took me a couple of years before I released anything. I think Pulse Drive was my first track that I released, which actually did great. Like I was really surprised because it was my first track I'd ever released, and I think that it got put into the chill synth playlist, and I was actually shocked that it did, because to me it sounded more like I guess lo-fi synthwave,
Sure. Yeah.
or more synth, the more, less of the classic chill synth, and more definitely more synthwave, that one. Yeah. So I wasn't really 100% like focused, and I was kind of making a bit of everything. I was making vaporwave at the time, down to lo-fi hip hop too, which I don't think I've ever released any of that, but I have tons of it on my hard drive.
That's amazing.
Got a lot of vaporwave too that I don't think I've released. I think I might, one of my tracks that I have out now is kind of on a vaporwave vibe. That Closer to You. Well, it's kind of like a chill synth vaporwave R&B kind of vibe. But nope, I have no pure vaporwave out yet. But I plan to. It's one of the things that I make. So I was making a bit of everything, and then I think in those first 2 years, because I didn't really have a focus, a lot of those styles just kind of blended together. And because I was experimenting a lot and just trying all sorts of things out, and I was being less intentional with what I was making, and just whatever worked and whatever came out of what I was doing is what I would end up with. But now, like, as opposed to now, where like 4 years later, I can be a lot more intentional with exactly what I want to make. And I've been working on my whole workflow and everything to get it so that I can sit down and have like 100% pure intention about exactly what I want to make, and I can do that now. Not to say that I'm not still combining sounds, but when I do it, it's definitely 100% intentional now. So you will end up hearing some fairly pure chill synth from me, some almost pure data wave. You're gonna hear some chill wave, even like maybe even a bit of psychedelic from me, and some pure vaporwave coming out too. A bit of everything. But this, I don't think I've mentioned it while we've been chatting here, but I do have an album coming out fairly soon in the new year. I'm not 100% sure when it will be out,
Yeah.
but that album is, um, like I was saying, a big hybrid of the main vibes that I'm going to be working with. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I've had a chance to listen to that album, and I'm really excited about it. And what I find interesting, and I think just clearly your vast influences, the tracks that you released on comps or your remix work or whatever it is, they all have their own different vibe or style, but there's still that through line of like, I recognize this as one of your tracks.
Right.
How did so you put some tracks out? How did you get on to, or like, how did you decide to put on, say, like the Polycora comp or the Stratford comp? Like, was that something like you did specifically for that? Did you have those laying around? Did you?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I'm actually, um, yeah, I'm on a few compilations. So there was that Polycore compilation
Mm-hmm.
and the Stratford Court, two compilations. There was
Yeah.
the Secret Selection and then the 10-year
Yep.
anniversary, and then also the PSC compilation, the
Yep.
Puget Sound Collective.
Yep.
Um, so I was first approached by, I think it was Nick, Polycora,
Yep.
and we released that song Command module
Yeah, it's a hot
on,
track. Yep.
yeah, on that cassette. And I'm trying to remember how that track came around. I think that Nick had approached me and asked, yeah, if I have a track or if I want to work on a track for the compilation. So that was a project that I had already started, and then I finished it up, and then yeah, then we released that for Polycora, and then Andrew from Stratford had reached out to me and on SoundCloud. He had found me through SoundCloud and asked me if I would like to make a track um, for a Secret Selection compilation. So I immediately said I had a track that I could send right then and there. I sent him that track Night Tide, which he really loved, and said, okay, let's do this. And so I finished that track up, and yeah, it got released on the Secret Selection. I can't remember which number. I don't know if it was 89. Yeah, but anyway, that was really amazing. I wasn't expecting to be approached by anyone for any releases. I was actually originally just going to self-release my music. I was even prepared to press my own vinyl and do my own releases, just for, it's a passion project for me, and I wasn't looking to like make a business out of it and start a big label or anything like that. I had nothing like that in mind. If I was ever going to, originally what I was thinking is, what I was going to do, that is just going to be my own releases that I would do on vinyl. But I ended up getting approached by labels that I hadn't reached out to them, and they just like found my music and approached me, and I was kind of blown away. I wasn't expecting any of that.
It's got to be an amazing sense of validation to, that people resonate with your music, because if you're very clearly passionate about music, and it's sort of driven by the support of a community, so to speak, and then also that creative endeavor, satisfaction yourself, and to have people reaching out to you, it's got to be an incredible feeling of like, wow, people resonate with this, because that's ultimately probably what you're going for, is that people resonate with what you put out there.
Definitely, it's for the most part, it's motivating. It motivates me to create more. Having an audience that connects with that music the same way that I connect with the music that I make. Without an audience, it would be a little less motivating to produce it. I'm not worried about like numbers and money and that kind of thing. I think in the beginning I might have been, I because who doesn't want to do what they love, for a living? But
of course,
you don't really choose to do art for a living. It kind of chooses you. Like, it's kind of a luxury to be able to do that kind of thing. So you can't really make it a goal, right? Like it's like like when you're releasing music, it's art. It's not you're releasing it to put art out in the world, not for the purpose of commerce. Like
Yeah.
you're not yeah.
I think that's
Like
a really
there's a
beautiful
difference.
way that you put all that together. Hey, sorry for interrupting. I hope that you're enjoying the episode so far, and that when you're done listening to it, that you'll tell us about it. You'll leave a comment. You'll like our page. You'll like the episode post. You'll share it. You repost it. You do all those things. All that kind of engagement makes a big difference for what we do. We want to hear from you. And at the end of the day, it's as much about community engagement as it is about anything else. So all of those things, commenting, liking, sharing, following us, it all matters. We also have a Patreon where you can contribute as much or as little as you want. There is some exclusive content on there, and we will continue to update that. But know that your contribution goes back 100% into the show. I'm not going to ramble on. Kyle and I would just like to say thank you for listening, whether it's your first time or you've caught all the episodes. Thank you. So without further ado, let's get back to the episode.
You are now listening to Paradise Arcade.
And I think that's a good lesson for a lot of folks when you put out a track or you do the thing and you get, maybe some artists get lost in the promotion, the Instagram stuff, all of those other things that are not the art itself, and then lose track of like, why are you doing this to begin with, or what maybe attached an audience to what you're doing. Because if you shift your focus away from what your original intentions were, it's going to have a different impact.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I was going to say too, and I think that it's more evident to listeners and to an audience if your music is more true. Like if you're connecting with your own music on an emotional level, and I think that your listeners will connect to it as well. I mean, that's the goal, that you want them to be able to connect to it that way. But if your main purpose is to sell a product, then you're not really emotionally invested. You're financially invested. And it's like a whole other thing, right? Like it's not going to sound the same, and it's going to be more predictable, more cookie cutter. It's going to be more, it's not going to be a unique part of you that you're putting out there. And it's not going to have the same type of satisfaction. And it's not, I just feel like if there's any new artists listening to this, like it shouldn't be something that you aim for, right? Like you're not going to get the same satisfaction out of it at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think, and this is my perception, totally whole perception, when I've known some folks that have gained some notoriety or a little bit of fame, a little bit of that comfort that comes from it, the drive and the output drops. So as the comfort and as the fruits of the thing increase, I've known a few folks where they dry up creatively, and then it's sort of like this trap of, you're this thing now, you're this artist or the music person or whatever it is, and you're doing this thing, and you sort of are almost trapped by your own thing that you created.
It's interesting because I've seen artists release music and reach a certain goal or level with their music, and then kind of slow down. And I haven't even released an album yet, but like I was saying, I'm gonna have an album out. I finished an album earlier this year, and it's just been on hold, and it's going to be dropping soon. And I never felt a need to slow down. I just kept wanting to make more, and the more that I learn, the more I want to make. And it's just like I don't really understand the whole slowdown or the drying up of output that a lot of artists go through. Like it's one thing that it seems to be like natural with many artists, but I don't understand it myself. Yeah, because I feel like the more you learn about production and the more you learn about why you do the things you do, and the more you learn about how to be like really intentional with what you're creating to do exactly what's in your head and getting that down into your DAW and doing that quickly, the more, like, if you become really comfortable with that, then I don't see how you wouldn't be driven to just create more when when you get to that kind of level, right? So
it's
yeah.
interesting because like I think there's different styles, and I think you have a method that's similar to some of the other folks that I know that have a really good workflow that can sit down even if they have nothing on their mind, but because of how they have their workflow set up, they're able to produce a large quantity of music. Some people I know, it's very much that chasing that inspiration, that feeling, that groove, so to speak, and music almost comes pouring out in sort of a stream of consciousness, but it's very temperamental. It's not consistent. It doesn't come out all the time because it's very pure emotional, but energy that's being made, as opposed to like a more intention, like being able to funnel your ideas and your feelings in a more structured way. And so,
Right.
I see some people that they struggle with it. They get in a dry spell for a few years, and then something happens. They feel good, and then it comes back, and they're able to be productive again. Then it goes away again. And I think for like what I'm hearing, what you're doing is that you're just able to very consistently have creative output. And again, just from what I think, what the listeners who are not aware of what you do, just listening to the tracks that you've released minus the album, they're very distinct feelings, and it's impressive that it's not just sort of the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah. I think that comes from me not really looking so much at other artists and using them as a reference to what I want to make, and it might be why it's been slower for me to get a lot of releases out the door too, because I want to produce exactly what's in my head and then get that down, but I also want it to sound good. So I think it was the reason why, I'd been wanting to release this album for a couple of years, but it took me a while to get that first album to a point where I was comfortable releasing it. But now I'm at the stage where I can get to that level with my music much faster and get things down in a much more intentional way. So everything just is moving a lot faster now. But sorry, I'm losing track of where we were in the
No, I'll loop it back.
All right.
Redirect. So you've got an album coming out soon. Exciting, very excited for people to listen to that. You've got these other projects, these other things. So is this all under the S.P.H.E.R.E.S moniker, or is this separate monikers? Have you thought about sort of like creating your own mini label to group all of your stuff together and get that out? Like what's the holdup on some of the other things that you've got?
Yeah, so everything that I'm working on right now is under the S.P.H.E.R.E.S alias. I haven't been branching out at all. I mean, I've kind of messed around with a bit of drum and bass, but even that, the type of drum and bass that I'm making is kind of a hybrid of things too. So it can still fall under the S.P.H.E.R.E.S alias. But no, the plan now, and I guess we can talk about this. The plan now, so that initial album is going to be released on Stratford Ct.
Yep.
It's dropping on I'm not exactly sure when, but it will be coming up, and we've been speaking about continuing that relationship. So I'm actually working on a couple more albums. I might as well say that
Yeah.
I'm finishing 2 more right now. I have a lot of music that's being finished, and so we'll probably see more than 1 album from me this year, most likely. At least 2, I'm thinking. But
Damn.
I don't see that slowing down, because it's pretty much one of my main focuses. I'm putting most of my time into music. It's just like a it's like my main passion, and also escape from like the crazy world we're in right now, right?
Absolutely.
I just don't, I don't want to even pay attention to anything going on around me other than being in my own world of music and design and the visuals that you see all over Instagram. That's me not even promoting my music. None of that music is actually whips that I'm actually most of the stuff that you see me posting on Instagram, that's not even stuff that I'm finishing. I'm doing it just for the sake of creating these audio visual environments that just they just take me away from everything and allow me to escape into this world of sound and visuals. And like I'm not doing it to promote my music. I mean, when my music is about to be released, I'll be doing that like anybody does, like say, this is coming soon, and kind of promote it with a little visual, that kind of thing. But yeah, from day to day, when I'm posting these visuals, it's because I love doing it, and I love actually like experimenting with my whole workflow when it comes to the visual setup, which we can get into if you'd like.
I have a couple of questions before that, though.
Yeah.
One, how did you arrive on S.P.H.E.R.E.S? Because it's a very particular iteration of S.P.H.E.R.E.S.
Oh, okay, so yeah, that's a good question. But so it's an acronym for a project that NASA has that is kind of a replication of the lightsaber training droid that you see in Star Wars, the one that shoots little lasers while you're training with your master. So S.P.H.E.R.E.S stands for Synchronized Position Hold Engage Reorient Experimental Satellite, and it's like I was saying, it's a replication of that training droid that they used in Star Wars, but they use it. NASA was using these to kind of do some experiments in space on synchronized flight, and they were using these to do that. I think they're decommissioned now, but so that's what the acronym stands for. But S.P.H.E.R.E.S in general, I mean, it's the stars, it's the planets, it's space is what it means to me. Yeah, everything in the sky.
I love that, and it makes sense with the. I was just watching this documentary about early '90s electronic music, and about how a lot of it was very future forward looking in a positive way, and like the style and the audio clips that were used, like Orbital, etc. And so that it's sort of it makes sense of like some of your history and your age where that comes in and being this obviously stars and galaxies and space. That's really, really cool. The thing the second question I had is, when you're sitting down to make a track, do you have like a drum line, a bass line, sound? How does that seed start for you?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. So I typically start, I mean, traditionally I would start with creating a set of chords, and then from there, the chords dictate, my bass line and my melody and the key I'm in and everything. But no, there's times where I might even start with a bass line first, and then a melody, and then chords. Then I could just extract the chords from even just from the bass line. But typically, so traditionally I would start with chords first, but now, and mostly in my DAW, like in the piano roll, I used to just push around MIDI notes. But now for all my new work, it's mostly all recorded. So I'm creating my chords on my keyboard, and then bringing those as MIDI into my DAW, and then from there setting that at like my standard chords, and then from that I create my chord rhythms, and then I may create a couple arps out of those, and then I'm recording all of my leads now by hand on keyboard. So that's one of the things that I've made sure to really improve in my workflow, is to get good at recording my leads in an expressive way on my keyboard, because it's something you can't do when you're just pushing notes around in the MIDI roll. You can't, like, how are you expressive when you're pushing, a note up or down, or you'd have to program in, like a little pitch bend or this. It's really time consuming, and you can't really work in a flow while you're doing that. You have to kind of like you have to slow yourself down and do it in more of like a mechanical way instead of emotional way. So if you're just playing quickly, you're doing things almost without even thinking, right?
Yeah,
it's just what feels natural and what feels intuitive to you at the time. So, I might have like my thumb on my pitch wheel, and then I'm playing leads on my keyboard, and then just going with the flow, how I feel while my track is playing back in the background. So what I'll do now, like when I'm recording my leads, I'll bounce my whole track with my drums and my chords and my bass I'll freeze it all, bounce it to a new track, and then disable all my instruments so that I have basically zero latency, and then everything I'm playing I'm hearing it in real time. Because having any amount of latency really sucks. Like, I'm sure, and I'm almost 100% sure that a lot of artists don't record like this because of their latency that they're having with their DAW. Like, they're not hearing it the same time they're playing it. So they're probably not using their keyboard as much as they could be, and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So typically I freeze everything, and then I record my leads now. And then I might do a bit of tweaking with my leads afterwards, but it's really been game changing doing that, so I can be really expressive with how I'm writing now.
That's amazing. And with this new workflow and these upcoming albums, do you have a set theme to them? Are they going to be, because like some artists, it's a theme, right? They 12 tracks or 9 tracks or whatever it is, a concept that they're going from start to finish. Other folks it's a collection of songs, like a diary in that time. How are you putting this new music together?
Yeah, my new music, I would say that I'm looking at more concept albums. So, but overall, I'm looking at kind of combining a vibe of like some really synthetic soundscapes, but with a really organic bass line. So a lot of the percussion that I'm using is really organic. I'm layering a lot of organic percussion with drum machines. I think a lot of my work traditionally, I was using breaks and layering breaks, and I was using less drum machines, and kind of less. I wasn't using as much MIDI drums, and I was doing more like chopping up of breaks and manually arranging them. And that's kind of one thing that I learned to do. Like, I say that I started producing 4 years ago, but really there was a year or two where I don't really consider myself to have been a producer then, but I was chopping breaks and making like hip hop out of basically like DJ Crush or Shadow type of hip hop, and like getting into like really choppy breaks and like really like, time stretching and then chopping and then doing all of this kind of thing. And I was using Sonic Foundry Acid and SoundForge.
Oh, sure.
And I was doing that stuff, but that's just really, really old school. But so that's how I used to chop up my breaks in a lot of the early Sphere stuff. And but yeah, now a lot of it's MIDI based with layered percussion. But I'm trying to go for like a more organic vibe, but with that really kind of spacious, like future vibe in there too.
I love that. I love it. And you're going to go into a topic before I interrupted you. I think it's you talk about your visuals and those processes.
So I might as well give you a little bit of history too, and how I got into that. So I talked a little bit about how I was a bit of a career student in design. And I worked in ad agencies for a while before I, ended up going corporate. But I was freelancing for a while, and I loved doing a lot of experimental animation in Flash. Like back when Flash was like a big thing. That's completely gone now. Now we're all HTML5 and video based motion that you're seeing all over the web, and not as much of that Flash and Flex style of like interactive animation.
Right.
But for a while I was heavily involved even in the gaming industry and working on visuals that were heavily Flash based. I actually worked on the microsite for Half-Life 2.
Okay.
For
wow, cool.
Yeah, for Valve. Years ago, I did a lot of the marketing for Half-Life 2, and that's where I really fell in love with like creating more of a environment out of the visuals, and not just like less of visual just for the sake of it being visual, but more of like having an interface, but also a lot of environmental animation and effects that kind of went into creating like a whole experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So and then from there I got into like the corporate work in New York, but that was just a lot more like just to pay the bills. Like I just switched to corporate because the agency work was too much. It came to a point where I'm sleeping at the office and crashed out on the couch because we'd have a deadline to get that. I remember that Half-Life 2 site. There was 1 month where I think I was sleeping at the office 4 days a week.
Oh man, that is.
I had my dog. I had my dog there. Yeah, it was crazy, but the place was amazing too. Like it was here in Liberty Village in Toronto, which is the center for all the big ad agencies, and it's a lot of like loft spaces that are just really amazing and really comfortable being in. But the work, yeah, it's grueling. Like you're working on really creative work, but the deadlines and everything, they're insane. And I had just like I had enough of that, which is why I moved on. But when I got back into visuals for my music, it had been a while since I had worked on that more like experimental style visuals like that I used to work on before the corporate work. So it took me a minute to like land where I wanted to be like with my overall style. I think a lot of the early visuals on my Instagram are a little more all over they're a bit kind of, you can tell like I was experimenting with different things, and I'm a little more all over the place, and they're a little bit more over the top, I would say, and not really refined, because I was trying to find my ground with like a visual that really suits the aesthetic of my music.
Yeah.
So it took me a minute because I had to switch gears from like being in the corporate world for so long and then going back into being really creative again on my own. So then I was working with After Effects a lot, and creating visuals for, was it that VSTV event last year?
Yeah.
Or the beginning of this year. Yeah. So that's when I started to kind of figure out where I was heading to. And I started working with a bit more of like it was a bit of kind of a psychedelic melt style mixed with glitch art, basically, was what I was doing. And then I discovered these analog circuit bent gear that you can basically find all over. But there was this one company, Tachyons Plus, who had some of the nice gear that you could find for this. And they had this unit called the Dream Weapon that combined a lot of the glitch styles that I liked with also a heavily psychedelic liquid vibe to it as well, if you want. Like it's really highly customizable, but I was able to find this one device that really had this combination of styles that I was looking for to do, and it just nailed it right away. So I essentially got that, and then my CRT, my old school Commodore, which was one of my first computers that I ever owned. The CRT I'm using is from an old, what is it? The VIC-20, I think. I'm using the model 1702. I'm pretty sure it's from a VIC-20 machine. But yeah, so I've got that connected to my Dream Weapon, and then I'm exporting video from my computer through the Dream Weapon to the CRT, and then I'm recapturing that with the camera. Basically set with the same refresh rate as or the same. I'm using the same shutter speed as the refresh rate on the CRT. Otherwise, you'd get that major CRT flicker.
Right. Yeah. That's incredible.
So that was like that actually was like a big trick that I had to kind of figure out in the beginning, because people were telling me, "Oh, you need to get the special CRT. You definitely need to get one of the, I forget the name of it now, PRV, which is what they use in broadcasting. If you want to have really, really crisp a CRT image that you want to capture." But then I realized if I just set my refresh rate of the shutter speed of my camera to the same refresh rate as my screen, it's going to look pretty crisp. It's going to look how I wanted it to be. So I was able to save a little bit of money there. But I still plan on getting one of those broadcast CRTs sometime, because those, you can't beat those. Like they're so amazing. But the wild thing is, and I don't mean to talk like to ramble on and on about this stuff. I could talk forever, right? One of the amazing things about this gear is that it looks absolutely different depending on what screen it's connected to. So what you're seeing now all over my Instagram is the look that I'm getting from my Commodore CRT. But if I have my Dream Weapon looped back through my video in on my PC, what I captured there looks completely different. It does not look the same at all.
That's
to those
so
visuals.
cool.
And then if I plan to get Sony Trinitron as well, which is probably the most popular CRT used for glitch art, because it just has such a nice glow and look to it. It looks amazing. Yeah, so I plan on getting one of those. I have to find space for all these different CRTs. My whole studio set up in my living room right now. It's taken over my.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, but that's fine with me.
That's really awesome.
It would be the dream one day to get a house somewhere and have a studio that's fully separate from other people. But I'm in a loft building here in Toronto, and the neighbors don't like the sub bass in here. So yeah, it's not the best place for a studio.
No.
So I have to stick to using my monitors on the weekend only and headphones the rest of the week.
Wow. So I mean, you're going in all cylinders right now. You're creating a lot of music. You're doing visuals. You're doing, you really are driven right now, and maybe this golden age of creativity. But we got the first album coming out. Is there anything with the first album that is going to come out on Stratford that you want to cover, you want to talk about? There may be some important tidbits about it. What are you proud of the most about it?
Yeah, so my first album is going to be dropping soon, and I'm really, really happy that and appreciative of Stratford for signing it on and wanting to get my music out there. So it's called S.P.H.E.R.E.S. Follows this story of essentially traveling through space and becoming lost and drifting, kind of like drifting, becoming marooned, and then finding your way home again. So that's the first album, and it kind of follows a few different vibes while you're traveling through the whole experience too. So I think it has a nice flow to it. I'm hoping that people will connect with it. But I'm really proud of some of the work in there. I've really tried to dive into a few different vibes and styles, and I was having just a lot of fun. Yeah, a lot of fun with it, and just kind of doing my thing. There's one track on there in specific that it wasn't even intentional, but it was it just kind of turned out that way. But this track Origin, which is kind of I don't even know how I would explain that track. chill wave, but with almost like a drum and bass line to it. Almost, it's kind of like a neurofunk kind of roller type of bass line to it. But the vocal, like it reminds me so much of Chino from the Deftones when he sings. Yeah, not when he's screaming, but when he's singing, he has a really similar voice to this. So, and I didn't even realize at the time that the Deftones have a shoegaze band. So I had posted a small clip of this before, and I mentioned, yeah, this is if the Deftones were doing chillwave, and then one of my friends sent me a link and said, well, now that you mentioned that, they have a shoegaze band, and I was checking them out, and yeah, that track's really interesting. I have a remix of Night Tide on there. I felt like when I first released Night Tide, I really loved the chords. I wasn't really happy with the drums after it got released, and I really wanted to redo it, so I did. So we've got this 2024 edit on there that I really like. And then it goes back into a bit of kind of like an ambient vaporwave again at the end. But yeah, I don't even know what's my favorite track on this. I would have to say I don't know. Synchronize is interesting too, because that's like a hybrid of data wave and chill synth. And yeah, I guess you can call it melt wave, although it's not necessarily like Horizon's melt wave or like the Alan Palomo's Psychic Drift album, which is what that melt wave sound for Horizon's album Data Fire. That's what drove and motivated that. It's different than that. Yeah, I don't even know. I don't know how I would describe it. I don't know. How would you describe it? You've heard it a bunch, right?
Yeah, I'd have to go back and refresh, and I think you're putting so many things together that there's elements, there's little things here and there, but there's not any. It's you, really. Ultimately, it's your music, and I love that you're talking about the different influences and the different things where like you have something in mind. And just it sounds like it's just you're playing, and I love that about music when someone's having fun and they're excited about what they're doing, and that's when you ultimately just break and do your own thing, right? And I think, because I don't frankly put your project in with anyone else. It sounds very distinctly you, and there's elements of certainly of all the things that you're talking about, but like I don't know that I could go, that bass line is from X thing, or that drum line, or that melody, or that particular effect, or whatever it is from over here. Like you're a master chef, and you're cooking some good stuff.
Thanks. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm glad you think so. I'm glad that it's been well received. I like I was saying, like I had no idea when I was originally releasing music, and a lot of artists in general are sensitive people, and we're always nervous when we're releasing music and putting it out there, and so you don't really have a clue how it's going to be received, especially when it's something that's that doesn't necessarily fit into a specific label. It's been kind of tricky for me to even place a lot of it in playlists and to get it curated, because it doesn't necessarily fit into a lot of playlists. But thankfully now I have a good relationship with a handful or two of playlisters that are continuously accepting my submissions now. So I'm happy about that. But a lot of times it's been tricky just getting it in there. Like you're saying, it doesn't sound like specifically like this or like that. It's just what's coming out of my head. It's what's in my mind, and like when I sit down, when I was writing a lot of the music in this, I wasn't saying, okay, I'm going to make a pure chill synth track that's going to sound like this, or like that's going to sound like this. I was just doing what sounds good to me, but within a certain range of sounds. Like I had an overall idea that, you know, I love chill synth. You know, I love data wave and vaporwave, and I love heavily syncopated things. Like anything that's funky, I love it. And I like energy levels like of a broad range. I like energetic music that makes me dance. I like down tempo as well. So I think that there's a bit of all of that in this. So it should be a good listening experience, I think, for people. It's definitely not it's definitely not I was going to say linear. It is linear in the sense that it follows a journey, but not linear in the sense that it's follows a line down one specific genre or style.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm really excited for people to hear it. Hopefully, obviously, when people are listening to this, it'll be right in line with that release. So I'm hoping that between when we're recording now and when the actual release comes, that it's really close. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share? Obviously, listen, folks that are listening, you got to check out S.P.H.E.R.E.S music, Instagram, obviously, and check out those comps. The songs that you have on those comps are absolutely stellar, and I think they really stand on their own, even amongst a lot of great other artists on those compilation albums. But yeah, any closing final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me on the show, and thank you, or for having me on your podcast and doing this interview with me, and yeah, I've really enjoyed chatting with you and knowing you, you know, all this time as well. But also, yeah, I guess there was a couple things that I wanted to mention, and just to give advice to people too, and to you know, like a lot of, like I was mentioning before, how a lot of artists are sensitive people, and a lot of times we overthink our music, we overthink what other people think. But if you just put yourself in your own world and just care about what you think about your music, and you have that emotional connection to your music and release what feels right to you, then your audience is going to connect with that, and they're going to not connect with music that's not as sincere if you're trying to force it into a certain way, or you're overthinking about, you know, what are people going to like, and you try to do things for other people. You have to do it for yourself. And even where it comes to, you know, having support from other people in the scene or the community, or how the community interacts with each other, and that kind of thing, it's not, you know, there's I've heard people, you know, talk about issues within the synthwave scene in general. I've heard that for years, even before I was producing, right? That there's a lot of, you know, negativity in the scene, and this kind of thing, and I don't want to really get into that. But and it's not, you know, synthwave or chill synth. It's every music scene like that you could ever even become a part of. You're gonna find that everywhere, because people are people. We're all human, and it's not different from one scene or another. You're not gonna leave one scene and go to another scene and it's going to be different. It's not like that. We're all human, and, you know, we all have human relationships, and you know, we all, you know, are going to just have to, like, how do I say that? It's basically, yeah, you're going to run into the same things in any scene. So essentially, the main thing that people have to keep in mind is that they're making music for themselves, and that they really connect with their music, and their audience is going to connect with them, and they're going to find their audience that way as well. You don't have to go searching as much for your audience. They're going to come to you if you're making really sincere music that comes from your own heart. And yeah, so
very wise words.
Again, it's a difference between art and commerce too, right? So yeah,
absolutely. All right, man. Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks for sharing your story with us. Again, I just, I love hearing this, and your story is so great, and I'm really excited for people to hear the album when it drops. And well, until next time, this is Eric.
Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Take care.
It's a motherfucking paradise arcade.